Emma Carson had no idea that the quiet boy who sat beside her in class, Caleb Langley, was secretly planning a double murder and would use her Instagram to hide the evidence. It was an overcast Monday morning in the quiet suburb of Dayton, Ohio. The kind of neighborhood where every house looked alike: fences, clean lawns, and tidy driveways. Nothing strange ever happened there, and that's exactly how the residents liked it. But something felt different that morning. Stillness hung in the air, as if the streets were holding their breath. At Willow Grove Middle School, attendance was being taken when Emma Carson's name was called in. There was no answer. Teacher, assuming she was running late, marked her as absent and moved on. But when lunchtime arrived, and there was still no word, concern began to grow. The school attempted to call her parents, Brad and Melissa Carson, but neither answered their phones. Multiple messages were left. Finally, a school staff member contacted local police to request a welfare check. Officers arrived at the Carson residence around 1:30 p.m. Everything looked normal on the outside. A red bicycle leaned against the side of the house. The lawn was freshly mowed, and packages sat untouched near the front door, but no one answered the repeated knocks. The officers tried the door. It was unlocked. What they found inside was deeply disturbing. The house was completely silent, save for the soft hum of a tablet playing cartoons in the living room. 11-year-old Emma sat curled up on the couch, staring blankly at the screen. She seemed calm, almost too calm, considering what had taken place only a few hours earlier. When asked where her parents were, she simply shrugged. The officers moved upstairs. That's when they made the gruesome discovery. Brad and Melissa Carson were found in their bed, both brutally murdered. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle. Blood had soaked the bedding and splattered the walls. It was a scene of pure violence, deliberate, calculated, and vicious. The bedroom window was locked from the inside, and nothing appeared to be stolen. What puzzled detectives the most was how Emma, sleeping just down the hall, didn't hear or notice anything unusual. Her room showed no signs of disturbance. She had no injuries, no signs of trauma. Her explanation: she had fallen asleep while watching videos on her tablet and didn't wake up until the police arrived. The case immediately drew attention from the media. A double homicide in such a quiet neighborhood, with a child left unharmed and unaware, was both chilling and confusing. Detectives began to comb through every inch of the house, looking for clues. They collected phones, laptops, tablets, anything that might offer insight. When they reached Emma's tablet, they noticed something strange. Her Instagram account, though private, had a hidden story archive. One video was marked as private, only me. When the tech team opened it, every assumption the investigators had made fell apart. The footage, though grainy and dark, clearly captured the murders in real time. The person filming had been inside the house. There was no mistaking it. The killer hadn't just come and gone unnoticed. They had lingered, filmed, and uploaded the video directly from Emma's own device. And worst of all, the small, shadowy figure seen briefly in a mirror reflection wasn't an adult. Someone small. Someone young. The video found on Emma's tablet changed the direction of the investigation completely. What had initially appeared to be a mysterious double homicide with no witnesses suddenly turned into a chilling revelation. Someone had recorded the murders from inside the house and uploaded the footage to Emma's private Instagram story. The 6-minute clip was dark, with shaky movements and grainy visuals, but it showed everything. The camera crept silently through the upstairs hallway of the Carson home. The person filming seemed to know exactly where to go, walking slowly toward the master bedroom. Then the door creaked open, and the screen filled with horror. The figure moved closer to the bed, where Brad and Melissa lay asleep, completely unaware of the danger. A moment later, chaos erupted. The footage captured the attack in full, every brutal strike and scream preserved in digital memory. The video was horrifying, but what disturbed investigators even more was the realization that it had been filmed on Emma's device. meant the killer had access to it before or during the attack. It was not posted publicly, only saved in a private story archive. Whoever did this hadn't wanted attention from the public, they had wanted to keep it for themselves. Analysts immediately began dissecting the video, searching for any trace of identity. Most of the footage avoided mirrors or reflective surfaces, but in the final moments, as the attacker backed away from the bed, a shape appeared briefly in the bedroom mirror. It wasn't clear at first, but frame by frame, a blurry outline began to take shape. It was small, too small to be an adult. Based on the height compared to nearby objects, the figure was around 4.5 feet tall. This discovery shocked everyone involved. Was it possible that another child had committed the crime, or had someone intentionally tried to make it look that way? Emma, still under protective supervision, was re-questioned. She stuck to her story, claiming she had no memory of anyone entering her room or taking her tablet. Her fingerprints were on the device, but that wasn't unusual. It was hers. Had no defensive wounds, no blood on her body or clothing, and didn't show signs of recent physical trauma. Despite the video being on her account, there was no solid evidence directly linking her to the attack. The possibility that someone had deliberately used her device to frame her became more likely. Investigators began digging deeper into Emma's digital history. They pulled metadata from the video, tracing its origin. It confirmed what they feared. The video was recorded directly from Emma's tablet, not transferred from another source. The timestamp matched the early morning hours when the murders occurred. There was no sign of forced hacking or external access. It had been recorded locally. This meant someone had held the tablet, used it to film the crime, and placed it back without Emma noticing. Police expanded their search. They interviewed neighbors, school staff, and friends, hoping someone had seen or heard something strange, but no one had. Carson home sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, with no security cameras nearby. Then came the next break, a hidden Instagram account linked to Emma's device. It had only one follower and one post. The profile photo was blank. The username was a jumble of numbers and symbols. Investigators followed the trail, unaware that what they were about to uncover would plunge the case into even deeper darkness. The hidden Instagram account linked to Emma's device was unlike any typical profile. It had no followers except for Emma's secret secondary account, and the only post was an old, black and white photo of a clown mask lying on a basement floor. There was no biography, no real name, and the username was a string of random numbers and letters that didn't match any known alias or handle in Emma's contacts. Yet, within the private message history between this account and Emma's second profile, investigators found a disturbing trail of conversations. The messages were vague but sinister, filled with cryptic phrases and dark suggestions. One message read, "Prove you're not scared." Another said, "There are only two kinds of people, hunters and prey." As they sifted through the chats, a pattern emerged. The tone of the conversation slowly shifted from innocent curiosity to something more manipulative and controlling. The unknown user had begun engaging Emma weeks before the murders. At first, it seemed playful little dares and games, but over time, the challenges grew darker. The most chilling message was sent just 3 days before the murders. It read, "The ultimate test is coming. Your silence will be your strength." Cybercrime specialists tracked the IP activity of the mysterious account. It led them to a house just 5 blocks away from the Carson residence. It was the home of the Langley family. When officers visited the home, they were met by 2 parents, who were shocked to learn their son, Caleb Langley, was a suspect in such a horrifying case. Caleb was 12 years old. He was quiet, smart, and rarely got into trouble at school. But what investigators found inside his bedroom painted a vastly different picture from the boy his parents thought they knew. The walls of Caleb's room were covered with drawings, some abstract, others deeply disturbing. One showed a stick figure family lying in red pools while a dark figure stood over them, holding a knife. Another was a floor plan of the Carson house carefully sketched from memory. In his closet, detectives found a small backpack containing gloves, a black hoodie, and a clown mask matching the one in the Instagram photo. His notebooks were even more unsettling. They contained pages of handwritten plans labeled with dates, times, and phrases like proven worthy, and Emma equals witness or weapon. Digital forensics uncovered even more evidence. Caleb had used school devices and public Wi-Fi to mask his online activities. He had memorized Emma's tablet passcode during a school group project weeks earlier and had been secretly monitoring her social media habits. The night of the murder, he entered the Carson house through an unlocked garage side door. Investigators confirmed his movements using timestamps from Emma's tablet and nearby Wi-Fi router pings. Caleb had not only committed the crime, but had orchestrated it with chilling precision. The video, it turned out, was never meant to be seen by the public. It was created as a trophy, a silent recording of his achievement. When questioned, Caleb showed no remorse. He answered calmly and directly, acknowledging what he had done without hesitation. The only thing he refused to explain was why. When pressed, all he said was, "Because I could." Caleb Langley's confession shocked not just investigators, but an entire community that had never imagined a child could be capable of such calculated cruelty. As the details emerged, the case took on a horrifying new layer. Caleb didn't act out of anger, revenge, or even fear. His motive was rooted in control and experimentation. Through journals, online searches, and private recordings stored on his personal devices, a disturbing philosophy unfolded. Caleb believed that people existed to be tested, manipulated, and judged. He saw life as a series of games, with others as pieces to be moved around the board. The murders were not random, but the result of months of planning, observation, and psychological games that culminated in the ultimate challenge: killing without consequence and manipulating someone else to take the fall. Emma Carson had been chosen long before the crime. Caleb saw her as the perfect pawn, quiet, socially isolated, and trusting. In his notebook, he described her as emotionless but smart, a sleeper piece. He had gained access to her world by pretending to be a mysterious online friend through a secondary account. Over time, he built a sense of connection by sending cryptic messages, encouraging her to play along with harmless dares and riddles. Once she trusted the account, Caleb escalated the content, slowly exposing her to more disturbing imagery and language. His goal was not to make her violent, but to desensitize her and ensure that when the time came, she would be too confused to respond or defend herself. On the night of the murders, Caleb waited until the Carson household was asleep. He entered the home through the garage side door, which he knew was rarely locked. He wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints and carried Emma's tablet, which he had previously taken during a school project and hidden in his backpack. He used the device to film the murders, knowing that every detail was being recorded not only as evidence of his power, but as a psychological weapon. By uploading the video to Emma's private Instagram story, he intended to frame her, if not legally, then socially and emotionally. He wanted her to live with doubt, suspicion, and guilt. In his writings, he called it a punishment without prison. He returned the tablet to Emma's room without her ever knowing it was gone. Then he left the house silently, walking back. Through the darkness, with the confidence of someone who believed he had won, he returned home, washed up, and went to bed. The next morning, while the city slowly woke to tragedy, Caleb blended into the background like nothing had happened. At school, he sat through his classes as if the night before had been nothing more than a dream. When police finally arrested him, he didn't resist. His parents were devastated and confused, unable to reconcile the quiet boy they raised with the monster described in the police reports. But to Caleb, it wasn't about emotion. It wasn't personal. It was just a plan executed perfectly. In the weeks that followed Caleb Langley's arrest, the nation struggled to process the horrifying truth. A 12-year-old boy had carefully planned and executed a double homicide, manipulated another child into unknowingly becoming part of his crime, and recorded it all as a personal achievement. News outlets across the country picked up the story, and for weeks, the Carson family's tragedy dominated headlines. The footage itself was never released to the public, but rumors and speculation spread like wildfire. Online forums exploded, with theories, some blaming violent media or internet culture, others insisting there had to be more to the story than what authorities had shared. But behind the noise was a quiet, painful reality. 2 lives had been taken. A child had been deeply traumatized, and another was on his way to spend his life behind bars. Emma. Carson was placed under the care of her maternal aunt and began intensive trauma counseling. Though she never spoke publicly about what had happened, those closest to her described a long and difficult healing process. She stopped using social media completely, withdrew from school for several months, and avoided any mention of Caleb or the case. For a while, her nights were filled with nightmares and panic attacks. She couldn't understand how someone she once sat beside in class, someone who had laughed at the same jokes and shared the same group projects, could be capable of such horror. What haunted her most wasn't the crime itself, but the thought that Caleb had chosen her, not just to witness the aftermath, but to carry the psychological weight of it. Meanwhile, prosecutors prepared to try Caleb Langley as an adult. Despite his age, the nature of the crime, the planning, the manipulation, the complete lack of remorse made the case unprecedented. Caleb was evaluated by multiple psychologists who confirmed signs of emerging psychopathy. He exhibited no empathy, no guilt, and no emotional response to the suffering he caused. In court, he sat quietly, listening as the evidence was laid out in detail. Surveillance records, digital footprints, notebook pages, and the infamous video all pointed to one conclusion: this was not a random act of violence. It was a deliberate experiment, carried out with chilling precision. The judge ruled in favor of trying Caleb as an adult, citing the calculated nature of the murders and the overwhelming evidence. He was convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder, unlawful use of a minor in the commission of a crime, and digital exploitation. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. By then, he would be in his 50s. The case left a lasting impact. Schools across the country began reevaluating how technology was used by students. Social media platforms like Instagram faced new pressure to monitor hidden content more strictly. Parents became more cautious. But even with these changes, the community of Willow Creek was never quite the same. The Carson home was sold, the Langley family moved away, and for years, people avoided talking about what had happened. But deep down, they all remembered the night innocence was shattered. By the lens of a child's camera,